Still answering questions, because this is an interview. Hi, I'm Rachel Zegler.
And I'm Kit Connor.
And we are here with BuzzFeed to answer questions with puppies. I think everyone's gonna see a new side to...
It's fair to say at this point that no one, and I mean absolutely no one, can stand the star of this movie. What began as one of Disney's most ambitious remakes has now become one of the most polarizing disasters in modern Hollywood history. Instead of choosing someone who could honor the legacy of a timeless classic, Disney decided to cast the most insufferable girl boss narcissist imaginable, someone who quite literally hates the very story she was hired to bring to life. Rachel Zegler, the actress meant to embody innocence, kindness, and charm, instead radiated arrogance, condescension, and disdain for the original tale. It's almost poetic how the studio picked the one person who couldn't represent Snow White less if she tried. Rachel Zegler has become a symbol of everything wrong with Hollywood's forced messaging, extraordinarily woke, but in a way that feels performative, self-absorbed, and, frankly, delusional. Every word that comes out of her mouth seems to drip with superiority and contempt for the people she's supposed to entertain. She doesn't just reinterpret the story. She tears it apart, mocking it as outdated and anti-feminist. It's as if she sees herself as a cultural revolutionary rather than an actress playing a fairy tale character. Instead of giving audiences a magical princess story, she turned it into a lecture, one about power, patriarchy, and the illusion of progress. What should have been a nostalgic celebration of Disney's roots became a bizarre, soulless message movie about modern values. The tragedy is that her attitude alone was enough to poison the entire project. The way she talks about herself in this film is so self-centered that it repels anyone who might have been remotely interested. The interviews, the red carpets, the sound bites, every single one felt like a public relations disaster. And then came the infamous quote, "If you disagree with me, just unfollow me. I don't need your business." That line summed up everything wrong with her mindset. She doesn't see fans as supporters. She sees them as peasants beneath her throne of moral superiority. This is someone so entitled that she believes her personal ideology matters more than the story, more than the audience, and more than the legacy of Disney itself. Let's not forget the bizarre creative decisions that surrounded her. Disney, in its desperation to appear progressive, decided to remove the 7 dwarfs, yes, the heart and soul of the story, and replace them with magical creatures. One single dwarf remained among them, like a token gesture to inclusivity that ended up being far more insulting than respectful. In trying so hard to please everyone, Disney pleased no one. What they really did was erase an entire group of people with dwarfism from one of the few major Hollywood roles that actually showcased them. Even Peter Dinklage, who originally criticized the outdated nature of the story, probably didn't mean for the representation itself to vanish completely. Because whether you like the fairy tale or not, there's undeniable power in visibility, and Disney stripped that away in the name of political correctness. Meanwhile, Rachel doubled down on every bad take she could find. She insisted she wasn't a damsel in distress, she didn't need a prince, and she wasn't here for some privileged white guy's opinion. Every quote, every interview, every press appearance just made things worse. Instead of coming across as empowered, she came across as bitter, resentful, and downright unpleasant. The irony is that by trying to fix Snow White, she ended up becoming everything audiences didn't want, a self-absorbed celebrity lecturing them about what's wrong with the stories they grew up loving. From the moment she was cast, the tone was set. She trashed the original film, insulted the audience, and claimed that her version would be modern and different. But all that difference did was destroy any remaining goodwill the movie had. Long before it ever hit theaters, Snow White had become a punchline, a symbol of Hollywood's complete disconnect from its audience. It was doomed before it even began. And yet, beneath all the buzzwords and interviews, there's something deeper, something unsettling. Rachel Zegler doesn't just sound arrogant. She sounds genuinely unhappy. There's a kind of bitterness and instability behind her words, as if she's using feminism and patriarchy as shields to hide her own dissatisfaction. She's not the confident, empowered woman she pretends to be. She's just another unstable Hollywood star trying to sound profound. Like so many in the industry, she confuses activism with anger and mistakes emotional chaos for authenticity. Disney, of course, thought her millions of fans would show up no matter what. They believed her hype, that her fame alone would carry the film to box office success. But when the lights dimmed and the movie finally hit theaters, the reality was brutal. The seats were empty, the excitement was gone, The audience that was supposed to line up no matter what simply didn't show up. And in that silence, you could almost hear the sound of Disney's dream collapsing. Rachel herself once compared her career to a broken statue, cracked, flawed, but still admired. She said she hoped that, despite her flaws, people would still line up to see her. But that hope turned out to be misplaced. Because when the movie finally premiered, when fans actually walked into theaters expecting magic, all they found was emptiness, both in the story and in the seats. And as one viewer joked while recording the experience, "I'm walking into Snow White. Let's see how empty it is." The camera pans across rows of vacant chairs. "I hope," he says, "it's off to the woke we go." Across social media, it's the same story playing out again and again. There are videos like this, thousands of them, all showing the same haunting reality. Empty theaters, 0 tickets sold, and a live-action Snow White that no one asked for and no one wanted. Rows of unclaimed seats, silent lobbies, and projection screens flickering before audiences that simply never came. What was once marketed as Disney's bold reimagining has turned into one of the most visible box office embarrassments of the decade. Every viral clip, every TikTok, every YouTube short paints the same picture, a film rejected by the very audience it was supposed to inspire. But the humiliation hasn't stopped there. Even Family Guy, one of television's most ruthless satirical juggernauts, is reportedly gearing up for an episode that takes aim directly at Rachel Zegler, and insiders say this one will hit even harder than the last. The show, known for its fearless mockery of Hollywood culture, apparently sees her ongoing controversies as endless material for comedy. Early script leaks suggest scenes that parody her outspokenness, her woke warrior persona, and her increasingly infamous interviews. One alleged gag portrays a version of Rachel caught in an exaggerated, politically charged rant before being sent off into the eternal pit of fire. A classic Family Guy over-the-top punchline meant to reflect just how insufferable her media persona has become. It's mean, it's biting, and it's exactly the kind of satire that mainstream audiences seem ready to embrace. And that's the real damage. Not that she's being joked about, but that she's become a recurring punchline. The once promising actress who was supposed to be Disney's modern princess has now become shorthand for Hollywood arrogance. When Family Guy starts turning you into a running joke, you're not just controversial, you're cultural cringe. Viewers online have summed it up perfectly. Oh wow, Snow White flopped? Who could have guessed? You cast arguably the most unlikable, self-absorbed person in Hollywood, and that's saying something because Hollywood is full of them. The satire isn't exaggeration anymore. It's just reality with a laugh track. It's just reality with a laugh track. For Rachel, who's been drowning in bad press for months, this might be her most humiliating blow yet. The memes, the think pieces, the parodies, they've all piled on, but being roasted by Family Guy is something else entirely. That show has been around for decades. It only targets figures who have crossed a cultural threshold, people whose reputations are so tainted that audiences instantly recognize the mockery. When you become that kind of celebrity, it means your career isn't controversial anymore. It's a cautionary tale. And her troubles didn't stop with the mockery. Behind the scenes, insiders began reporting that Rachel Zegler had quietly been let go from several upcoming Disney projects. Among them was voiceover work for Toy Story 5, a role she was reportedly slated to perform before being removed from the production entirely. Sources described it as part of a reputation cleanup effort at the studio, as executives tried to distance Disney from the storm surrounding her Snow White comments. For a company built on wholesome, family-friendly branding, having a lead actress constantly accused of arrogance and hypocrisy wasn't just bad optics. It was business suicide. To truly understand how it all collapsed, you have to rewind. Rachel Zegler's career began like a Hollywood fairy tale. After her breakout role in West Side Story, critics called her a rising star, a new voice in cinema, and perhaps the next great Disney leading lady. She had raw talent, charisma, and a sense of destiny about her. Being cast as the lead in Snow White should have been her crowning moment, the role that turned her into a household name. But almost as soon as the announcement was made, the narrative began to unravel. The trouble didn't come from leaked scripts or production issues, it came from Rachel herself. Her interviews quickly became the center of attention, but not for the reasons you'd expect. Instead of showing gratitude or excitement about joining one of Disney's most iconic franchises, she used her platform to tear it down. In one of the first viral clips, she dismissed the 1937 classic outright, saying, "It's no longer 1937. She's not going to be saved by the prince. She's not dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be. On the surface, it sounded like harmless modernization, but to countless fans, it came across as condescending, as if Rachel believed that people who loved the original were outdated or unintelligent. Worse, she went further, describing the prince in the classic film as a guy who literally stalks her, calling the whole story weird and outdated. In that moment, she didn't sound like someone honoring a legacy. She sounded like someone embarrassed by it. The backlash was immediate and ferocious. For Disney fans, it wasn't about feminism or political correctness. It was about respect. Respect for the character, for the story, and for the millions of people who grew up with it. Instead of building excitement, her words alienated audiences. What could have been a celebration of a timeless fairy tale turned into a culture war, with Rachel Zegler at the very center of it. And now, as the dust settles, the pattern is clear. Empty theaters, mockery from mainstream comedy, lost roles, a reputation in freefall. What began as a Cinderella story has transformed into a modern-day cautionary tale, one that Disney, Rachel, and the entire industry won't soon forget. It sounded, to many people, like Rachel Zegler was ridiculing the very roots of the classic she had been entrusted to honor. The irony was almost painful. Disney's Snow White live-action remake had somehow become a version of Snow White, without any trace of Snow White's spirit, made by a team that seemed to resent everything that once made it beloved. When the promotional clips began circulating, the backlash came fast and mercilessly. It wasn't just a few angry comments, it was a cultural wave. The trailer was historically ratioed on YouTube, one of the most disliked Disney uploads in modern history. Comment sections filled with disbelief, sarcasm, and frustration. The momentum only grew as more interview clips surfaced. What a handful of defenders praised as bold and empowering, millions of others saw as smug, dismissive, and condescending. Every soundbite became fuel for the fire. One parody review that went viral captured the public mood perfectly. A content creator jokingly gushed, "Guys, I just saw the new Snow White. Best movie I've seen in years. Better than Madame Web, better than Rebel Moon, even better than that one with the transgender drug lord. This movie has it all. Horrifying CGI little people? Check. A feminist princess who don't need no man? Double check. A Diddy-style dance party at the end? Triple check." The sarcasm was unmistakable, but it resonated because it reflected how audiences genuinely felt, that this new Snow White wasn't magical or inspiring. It was corporate, awkward, and tone-deaf. Before long, the phrase "girl boss Snow White" began trending, and not in a flattering way. It became shorthand for everything people disliked about modern Hollywood remakes: forced messaging, shallow empowerment, and an almost complete rejection of the story's timeless values. Every time Rachel appeared in public, every new interview or award show moment was met with amplified outrage. Fans and critics dissected her every word, searching for more evidence of arrogance or disconnect. What was meant to be a joyful press tour transformed into a global public relations nightmare. One moment in particular poured fuel on the fire: her awkward dynamic with co-star Gal Gadot. During interviews and red carpet appearances, viewers noticed the tension, the lack of chemistry, the stiff body language, the polite but distant smiles. The Oscars appearance made it undeniable, as the announcer's voice echoed, "Please welcome Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot." The two walked on stage, glamorous but strangely uneasy. Rachel read her lines about the power of visual effects. Their work makes the impossible seem possible, wrapping our imaginations in magic. Yet the atmosphere felt anything but magical. The exchange was forced, mechanical, cold. Viewers immediately picked up on it, flooding social media with side-by-side clips and slow-motion analyses. Rumors spread that Gal Gadot had quietly chosen to distance herself from the controversy, that she was polite in public, but privately frustrated by Rachel's behavior. Whether true or not, the perception stuck, and that perception was devastating. Meanwhile, Disney stayed eerily silent. No clarifying statements, no creative course corrections, no effort to reassure longtime fans that the film still respected its roots. The company simply pressed forward as if nothing was wrong, as if the backlash was a passing storm that would eventually fade. But it didn't. The film's identity crisis was visible in every frame. Gone were the seven dwarfs, replaced by a group of vague, magical creatures that left audiences wondering what story they were even watching. Gone was the prince, replaced with an abstract message about self-reliance that sounded more like a TED Talk than a fairy tale. Gone was the warmth, the whimsy, the heart. What reached theaters wasn't Snow White, it was a political statement wrapped in fantasy branding, a story so rewritten that even its name felt misplaced. Fans began to ask a simple but damning question: was this even Snow White anymore? Then came the viral interview clip that seemed to summarize everything wrong with the project. Rachel, sitting confidently in front of the press, explained that her version of Snow White didn't get her name because of her fair skin. Instead, she said, she gets her name from surviving a snowstorm. She elaborated that the true meaning of fairness was about inner goodness, about how one treats others, not physical beauty. It was meant to sound profound, but instead it came across as defensive, as though she was rewriting the lore out of insecurity or guilt. Her quote spread like wildfire. Critics accused her of bending the story's symbolism into hollow virtue signaling. Others argued she'd missed the point entirely, that the phrase "skin white as snow" was never about exclusion, but about imagery and innocence. To older fans, it felt like yet another attempt to erase the past instead of honoring it. And that's when the conversation shifted. It stopped being about a single actress or a single movie. It became a broader reflection of Hollywood itself, an industry so obsessed with modern messaging that it forgot why people fell in love with these stories in the first place. Snow White was supposed to be a return to magic. Instead, it became a monument to misunderstanding, a glittering billion-dollar reminder of what happens when you try to fix something that was never broken. And that, ultimately, is the heart of the misunderstanding between Snow White and the Evil Queen, a reflection of envy, insecurity, and self-worth disguised as morality. It's a story about perception versus reality, and Rachel Zegler herself became entangled in that very theme. She once said she found the message of the new Snow White empowering, claiming that Disney had reimagined it for a new generation with a more modern and inclusive voice. But in hindsight, that new voice became the very thing that fractured the legacy. What was meant to be a message of empowerment ended up being seen as arrogance and self-righteousness. And the result was a cultural implosion no one saw coming. When Disney finally released Snow White, the response was chillingly underwhelming. Despite the film's iconic name and the studio's vast marketing machine, audiences simply didn't show up. The movie debuted to disappointing box office numbers, struggling to even match modest expectations. It wasn't just another underperforming live-action remake, it became the most divisive project in Disney's modern history. Critics called it hollow and joyless. Fans mocked it as a parody of itself. And now, to seal its place in pop culture infamy, Family Guy has done what it does best: immortalized it through savage satire that cuts uncomfortably close to the truth. For Rachel Zegler, what began as a golden opportunity, a chance to become a Disney legend, transformed into a cautionary tale about how quickly a rising star can fall when public image and ego collide. Her once bright Hollywood future became overshadowed by controversy, backlash, and relentless internet scrutiny. Whether people agreed with her feminist take on the story or not, the fallout was undeniable. The film's reception cemented her Snow White in a new kind of Hollywood history. One defined not by box office success or artistic acclaim, but by public rejection and cultural backlash. When the dust settled, the numbers told the story in brutal clarity. On IMDb, Snow White sank to a jaw-dropping 6 out of 10, making it one of Disney's lowest-rated productions ever. It wasn't just a financial disappointment, it was a cultural catastrophe. The audience didn't merely ignore it, they celebrated its failure. Online forums, Reddit threads, and TikTok videos mocked every frame, every line, every empowered speech. Memes circulated under titles like "How Not to Market a Movie" and "The Wokest Disney Flop." Overnight, Rachel went from Hollywood's next big thing to the face of one of the industry's most embarrassing PR disasters. Then things took an even darker turn. In the chaos that followed, an AI-generated OnlyFans profile using Rachel's likeness began circulating online. It wasn't real, but it didn't matter. Within hours, it went viral, amassing thousands of followers who laughed, joked, and speculated. For a brief moment, people believed it might actually be her. The speed at which the fake account spread revealed a harsh truth. Rachel's public image had fallen so far that something so disrespectful didn't shock anyone anymore. The line between satire and cruelty had blurred, and she was caught in the middle. In Hollywood, perception is everything. Once that perception breaks, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. After Snow White, whispers began spreading quietly through the industry. Casting calls that once had her name circled in red were